There are not a lot of tier 10s I dislike to play. The majority of them have downsides, but they also have upsides. A good example of this is the Chinese tier 10 Lite, the WZ-1321. It has incredible DPM, a super strong mechanic that allows you to know when you're spotted and who spotted you. The downsides are terrible gun depression, very weak modules, and not so many hit points. The Object 260, on the other hand, is one of those tanks that, on paper, looks great. In reality, just, oh boy, it's not very fun to drive. And it's mainly the fact because it's a big Soviet heavy. Normally, when you look at a Soviet heavy, especially this vehicle, you would expect strong frontal armor, an incredibly well-armored turret, and a pretty average gun when it comes to damage per minute. But this vehicle completely flips the stereotype on its head. It has an incredibly accurate gun, but zero armor and incredible mobility. Now, as I said, on paper, the tank looks great. It has a top speed of 50. It's got an amazing gun with 2,800 DPM, 0.317 dispersion, good aiming time, good alpha. It's kind of got everything going for it, until you take a look at its downsides. Its gun only has 6 degrees of gun depression, which is terrible. It means that basically in any position you try to use this tank, you're not going to be working it very well. And anything that has gun depression and good armor is going to work it a lot better. For example, a Super Conqueror, M6 Yo, Kron, Concept 1B, T110 E5. Those are just a few. I could say the VZ55, AMX M454, even mediums have more turret armor and more gun depression. And when you add that on to the fact that this vehicle features absolutely horrible hull armor, it makes a lot of sense on why the Object 260 features some big downsides. I do not think the vehicle is currently worth the price tag. However, there is a bit of a saving grace that could be coming very soon. This Thursday, Wargaming is going to be releasing the Soviet patch notes. And with the Soviet patch notes, they might be buffing the Object 260. We will have to find out what they do, because I cannot predict what they're going to do. But what I can say is I would expect this vehicle to get a rather large buff. I'm hoping that it gets a buff to its, I'm not really sure, armor, gun. It's just such a bad tank for every situation. Like, look at this thing's gun depression. Why does it have that bad gun depression on a vehicle with this bad armor? It just doesn't make sense. And the turret armor, by the way, not incredible either. It's not bad turret armor, but it's nothing I would trust in any situation against something that has decent penetration. Got the T30. You can see the .317 dispersion is really not that impressive. It's not bad, but it's definitely nothing impressive. IS-7 shoots, and unfortunately my Yo drives into me, which completely screws up my shot, so that's rather irritating, I'm not gonna lie. We got the 50B off to the side. I can't pen him because, oh, what's that? This vehicle gets, yeah, that's right, APCR as standard ammunition. The worst round possible to get as a standard round. So that's trash. The crazy part is we can't even pen that IS-7, so I'm not going to bother. We're going to make our way over towards the T110 E4, see if we can get a shot in, and a bonk. Just look at how much we had to drive over this hill to get a shell into this E4. It's a little ridiculous, and it's a perfect example on why the 260 is just such an uncomfortable tank to drive. So we were able to get some damage out so far. We got the IS-8 in the back, and again, just look at how much we have to drive over this ridge. Can't even get a shell into the IS-8. This thing also does not feature good pen. It's only 340 mils, and that's with running Cali. The IS-4 has the same alpha, but just way better pen. So I know I'm complaining a lot, and there are people out there that, for some reason, like this tank, but I'm going to be real. I'm not one of them. It's not bad, but it's definitely not good. We got a very lucky miss from that E4 on our vehicle side, and at this point we're going to try and roll off to the side of this T30. Now, one of the massive downsides the T30 features is terrible reverse, so we were able to take advantage of that. I will say, one thing I do like about the 260 is the fact that it features such good reverse. You can reverse at 20, which means that whenever you're stuck in a situation you don't want to be in, you can usually get yourself out of it. So let's go for a shell into the side of the E4. There you go, nice 439 slap. We got the IS-7, we got the E4 still off to our side, so let's use that good mobility, get a shell into the side of the IS-7. E4 is off our side, but As you can see, the Yo is able to finish him off. This here is once again a pretty good example of the terrible pen on this vehicle. Thankfully, I'm smart enough to know where to shoot the IS-7, but yeah, it's just bad. Add that into the fact again that you have no gun depression on this tank, and I don't know, man. It's not a bad vehicle, but it's definitely in need of a buff. I would say, as I said, either give it more gun depression. I think 7 degrees would make it a hell of a lot more enjoyable on any ridgeline, even 8 degrees. Like, why doesn't this thing have gun depression? If you don't want to give it gun depression, then give it either a pen buff, because the thing has absolutely atrocious standard and premium pen for the fact that, let's compare this gun to the IS-4, or even have it the T95 E6, right? T95 E6 has a better power to weight than this vehicle. Next update, the T95 E6 is getting a better damage per minute value, and it is getting combat stabilization. So next update, the E6 is going to have 3,400 DPM, it's going to have crazy values going for it, and 374 millimeters of heat pen. This tank with Cali has 343 mils of heat pen. That is 30 millimeters less. Not only that, but the E6 features 10 degrees of gun depression. This tank only features 6. So the E6 has more mobility, more gun depression, and a much better armor profile due to the fact it's super low down. It also has double the camo. So, I mean, if you would go stat by stat and compare the Object 260 to the current E6, the 260 is literally worse in every way. It's slower, worse gun depression, the turret is not really that much better on the armor, and the gun is just flat worse on literally every value, including DPM and penetration, only slightly better on accuracy. So, I know, I'm complaining about the 260 a lot, and I do in the majority of videos I talk about this tank. But there's a reason. It is just not an optimal tank to use in Tier 10. You'll notice I'm not necessarily calling it a useless tank. Last battle we did 3,700 damage, and there probably will be 260 fans that try to point out I did well in the vehicle, which therefore calls it good. It's not bad, it's just much worse than the other Tier 10s available. So we're going to use the good mobility the tank has this game to make our way over to the B crossing. This is a very good early game spot if my team supports me. We'll find out. But right now they only have one tank destroyer, which is an E4. No duh. Everybody's been spamming the E4 since its buff. Kind of annoying, I'm not going to lie. It's actually really annoying to fight because it's just another heavy on the enemy team. We got the 62A off to the side. Let's see if we get spotted for poking that. Yes, we do. But it looks like the majority of the enemy team is going off towards this side. The only spot I would possibly suspect a nasty tank to sit in. Oh, that's a Sheridan. But we actually got a pretty lucky bounce, I'm not going to lie. This thing does have some troll spots that lower pen vehicles might struggle to actually cut through, like the Sheridan, for example. But for the majority of opponents, they're just going to butter right through the vehicle. Right now, we're just going to hold off that Sheridan. I think that's actually a pretty good idea. Our team is kind of slowly butchering the rest of the enemy, and I'm kind of hoping that my team gets wide. If my Ho-Re can support me here, I don't really mind bleeding a little bit of health. There you go. There's the Sheridan. And of course, he just slaps me for 550. You'll notice how I don't bounce anything. And it's the sad fact, but it's also the truth about this vehicle. You literally don't bounce anything. So the Sheridan is bailing. Okay, well that's fine with me. We're going to poke the 62A, get a nice shell into his tank. Now, while we have bled some health, the nice thing about this vehicle is that it's got a pretty decent chunk of health at 2,400. It's the same as every other heavy, but it's enough that you can pretty easily take a shot or two from the enemy and still have some health left. So you can see we get a nice shell into the enemy AMX-50B. Now we got the Yo reversing, and we're going to try and get a shell into the Yo here. Actually, no, I'm going to try and get a shell into the Sheridan if I can. The Sheridans are cringe, and nobody likes them, so I'm going to get a shot into that Sheridan. We're up to 1,800 damage at this point. We've got the 50B, who I'm going to try and shoot if I can. Oh, never mind. That's rather unfortunate, but that's fine. We still got a shell into the Yo, and just like that, we're going to try and get a little bit more damage out. I don't really think this Yo has any more shells, and even if he does, I mean, he's literally shooting like a single shot with his autoloader. I don't know what he's doing, but he's not doing a good job at it. I'm going to be real. We got the 50B. Let's get a nice HE into the rear of his tank, finishing him off. And just like that, again, not an awful game. I mean, the 260 definitely can get a farm out. It's got damage per minute, and it's got mobility. And those are two of the most important aspects in Tier 10 to do well. But it just doesn't have the other things that you'd want. So, oh well. I think the 260 will get buffed. The reason I'm making a video on the tank today is because it is for sale right now, 17,500 gold if you wanted to get it bare bones stock, and about 20,000 gold if you wanted to get it fully upgraded. Do I think it's worth it? I don't think it's worth it as of right now, but it might be worth it if Wargaming does release the patch notes, which they're going to, as I said, Thursday. So when the patch notes come out, it will be very interesting to see what is done to this vehicle. I think it's going to be buffed. This tank will still be for sale on Thursday, so keep an eye out for my patch notes video on the Soviet tanks. I'll be letting you know all the changes that are going to happen, and this is going to be one of the tanks that will be changed. So hopefully for the better, but I guess we'll find out. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.